coastal city experiences high and low tides that follow a sinusoidal pattern over time. The depth of the water at the harbor, so the depth of the water at the harbor in feet can be modeled by the equation d of t is equal to 8 sine of pi over 6t plus 12, where t is in hours. At which hour does this first high tide occur? So before you kind of solve this problem, what you need to know is you need to know about the features of the sinusoidal function. You don't need to learn how to graph the sinusoidal function, but it does help, like, if you ever need it. But I think the main thing to know is you need to know the features of the sinusoidal function and what they do. So if y'all don't know that, make sure to review it real quick, because I'm just going to assume that you know it. Now, whenever in a trig word problem, you see high and low, high represents the maximum value, okay? Whenever you hear high and low in a sinusoidal problem, high usually represents the max value, and low represents the min value, or the minimum value. Because remember, a sinusoidal function looks like a wave, right? There's going to be a maximum value, there's going to be a minimum value, right? And we're saying a coastal city experiences high, which can represent the maximum value, and low tides, which can represent the minimum value. Now, we're trying to find at which hour does the first high tide occur. So we're trying to find, basically, you can think about it as, at which hour does the first, instead of first high tide, I can just say, I'm just going to replace it with maximum point. So at which hour does the first maximum point occur? Okay? So that's the thing you need to know, right? These word problems, they're trying to trick you up with all of this vocabulary. Just know that high represents the max value, low well, if we want to find out the first maximum point, well, we need to know the period of our function. So the period is just going to represent, well, how long is it going to take for this function to complete one cycle, right? Now, for a sinusoidal function, well, notice how this sine function reaches the maximum point like this, right? The first maximum point that the sinusoidal function reaches is going to be this maximum point right over here. So let's try to find this. So in order to find the period of our function, what you do is you take 2 pi over b. And I'm assuming y'all know this, okay? So if y'all don't, please watch this video. Now, 2 pi over b, this is going to give us 12. In this context, it's going to be 12 hours, right? Because think about it, right? Our graph right over here is going to be measuring when time passes, how does that affect our depth? How does this affect our depth? So on our x-axis, we have time, right? And on our y-axis, we have the depth of the water, right? We're trying to find out how does the time affect the depth of the water. So in this case, notice how when you're looking at a period of a function, right over here, this represents an x value, right? This clearly represents an x value, right? So in this case, our x value is in time, so which means that this period right over here has to be in time as well. So our period is going to be 12 hours. Now, if we know that this right over here is 12 hours, well, and also notice how in one period, you can divide this into 4 sections. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4 sections. You can divide it into 4 equal sections. So if we're only trying to find one section right over here, well, all you have to do is you're going to take your period, in this case it's 12, and you divide it by 4, because there's 4 sections, right? And you want to find out the length of one section. So 12 divided by 4 is 3. In this case, 3 hours. And that's the amount of time it takes to reach the first maximum point.